Am I standing in the right place? Hang on. No, just about. Hopefully you can hear us and see us. We'll be starting momentarily. Let's see here. You know what we're talking about with the OpenAI stuff, right, Dan? You sort of followed that story, so.
What was that?
The OpenAI stuff, Sam.
I know. Not as much.
Good. Okay, so none of us are prepared.
I know a little bit, but like I just stopped caring.
Let me type OpenAI into Bing.
Yeah, there you go. Give yourself a few minutes.
Yeah. I'm ready to start when you are.
You see Telegram.
Yeah.
Let's see. Move this stupid window. Come on, window. Okay, I am now recording.
I am now recording.
3, 2, 1, clap. Welcome to the Windows Central Podcast, episode 334 for November 30th, 2023. Hey everyone, Dean and Rubino here, joined with Zach Bowden for another exciting episode of the Windows Central Podcast. It's been a while, so apparently I forgot how to speak, but we have a short podcast this week, as you probably know, holiday season, Thanksgiving, going into Christmas now. Not a ton of news, plus we're pre-CES. And that's where everybody holds back and announces their big stuff. So I'm getting news behind the scenes. I just can't tell you what that is yet. But for this podcast, we'll be talking, of course, about the OpenAI drama and Microsoft, as that's been happening over the last, week and a half, 2 weeks. It feels like a lifetime. But that was a funny story that dropped on Friday night after we did the podcast, and then has developed since. Also, of course, Windows 11 preview builds and insider news and what's going on with those. I guess we could also talk a little bit about the Black Friday, Cyber Monday, if any of us bought anything or what the best deals were, because I have some opinions at least on some of that. Also, Microsoft's Bliss Ugly Sweater is here. So if you know, Microsoft every year does their ugly sweater contest. I did get mine. I still have to unbox it and do some photos. I've just been in 900 meetings. And I'll probably wear it next week or at some point. If I didn't put it on today, obviously. Zach is still technically waiting on his, which he assumes he's getting, but we haven't heard if he is. So he's wearing last year's version.
No, they told me they sent me one. I just don't have a tracking number, and it's not arrived yet. So I'm just waiting for it to show up. And so I'm wearing the old one, not because I felt left out, but because it's really cold here in the UK. So I need to be warm.
Yeah, you have received my cold weather from a few days ago. I can tell you what your forecast will probably be. It's going to warm up briefly again, slightly, but not warm, but just bearable, and then it'll get cold again. So enjoy it. A lot of wind on some days too. But we'll also talk about the thing of the week. I guess I have to think of it. Oh yeah, I know. I kind of know my thing of the week too. There's been a couple of stuff that's been going on there, but the ugly sweater stuff is fun. It's funny. I have every single one except 1 year. 1 year, they didn't send them to Zach and I.
Which year is that?
It was, I think, 2 years ago, or
because you're right. I'm missing one as well, but I don't know which one I'm missing.
Yeah,
it's really weird because so throughout the years they've done a Windows 95 one. They've done a Windows XP one before. They had like a generic Windows XP one. They did a Microsoft Paint one. They did a Clippy one. Yeah. And there's one more that I don't remember what it is.
Yeah, the one we're missing.
Yeah.
We'll solve this mystery at some point. Anyway, how are you doing, Zach, besides being cold?
I'm not too bad. I am not too bad. Working on a couple of interesting stories right now, which I'm hoping will be up before the end of the year. This is sort of my last exclusives of 2023, which will hopefully detail the plan for Surface and Windows going into 2024. But still working on it for now, so we're not going to be talking about that today. Other than that, I am not too bad. How are you?
Hanging in there. We're coming off of, no one wants to hear this, but the holiday Thanksgiving part, which is where most people rest and enjoy life. For us, it's working the weekends and
Hmm.
working overtime, covering all the deals and stuff, trying to do a service to everybody by letting you guys know what are the cool things to buy. Um, Actually, as well, we could talk about that just briefly before we go into the open AI stuff. I think the big thing right now, I'm a big fan of course, is the Asus ROG Ally. We keep talking about this idea of handheld gaming PCs is becoming bigger and bigger. And so the ROG Ally, the Z1. So there's two. There's the Z1 and Z1 Extreme. As you can imagine, Extreme is faster, but it's also more expensive. But now it went on sale. The Z1, actually, I think both went on sale, but the Z1 dropped in price to what was it, $449 for Cyber Monday and Black Friday and all that kind of stuff, which was a good deal. And then it dropped down to $429 yesterday, and then it dropped again yesterday to $399. So if you've been thinking about getting a handheld gaming PC, and we've reviewed all of them, and Rebecca Spears, our expert on it, although I have them too, she says that's the best one to get because it's this great size. It has a variable refresh rate display. The software is a little bit more baked than Lenovo's. So the Lenovo's is catching up there. They've been doing updates too. Uh, but you can get for $399 now at Best Buy. That's a really good price, right? Because it was normally the retail for that was $599. So to put that in perspective, so it's $200 off. If you live in an area that has an open box available, it's $299. 200 like now, I mean, that is like, getting the Nintendo Switch area kind of, right? And open box, I have no problem buying open box, especially if it's from a local store, because you could just buy it, pick it up, check it out. It's gonna be fine, right? If you have any issues, you just bring it back. It's not a problem. But I think I don't know why, if you're listening to this podcast, you wouldn't want one of these outside of cash, which is a legit problem for people. I understand. But like, if you can get the open box one for $300 or the brand new one for $399, $400, like these are cool devices. Yeah, the battery life is not the most amazing thing, but as I talked about previously, that like I use these mostly on the couch where I'll game for an hour, I'll plug it in, get up, make myself something to eat, come back and play again. It's not that big of a deal. And if you actually need to be mobile, it's fine. Like you'll be able to get a couple hours out of it. But just being able to play like Steam and Xbox games on this thing, I don't know. It's really cool. Like it's just one of my favorite new categories we're seeing for Windows devices. Um, I think it's better than Steam Deck. I get Steam Deck. I like Steam Deck a lot, but the display on the ROG Ally is just so much better, and it's smaller and lighter than the Steam Deck, even the OLED. Uh, so there you go. That's kind of my big deal. Zach, was there anything that you stuck out? I know you covered a lot of the Surface stuff.
Yeah,
Specifically, speaking of open box, they have some refurbished,
right.
which again, I bought refurbished, and refurbished is cool because these are certified, meaning they go through Microsoft. Microsoft checks everything, repairs things, replaces things, and then sells it off again with the same warranty. I don't know why you wouldn't buy refurbished. It's not
Yeah,
like
I
it's
think
damaged.
refurbished. Yeah, I think refurbished gets a bad rap because things like Amazon refurbished, and there are certainly refurbished programs that aren't as squeaky clean as
Yeah,
say Microsoft. I think Apple's is the gold standard. I think if you look up reviews of Apple refurbished, theirs is basically Apple essentially gives
yeah,
you a new device externally. The only things that are used are the motherboard and the components on the inside of the device, but Apple will quite literally replace the external chassis and the screen and stuff and the battery. And box it up as if it was a brand new thing. Microsoft does a similar thing. Microsoft actually has an entire refurbished store. If you go to the microsoftstore.com, there should be a link there. It's quite hidden. Same for Apple. I don't know why they hide them, but they do. But on Microsoft's refurbished store, you can actually get like significant discounts off Surface PCs. And right now, you can even get significant discounts off the latest Surface Pro 9 and the Laptop 5, which I've never seen the latest version of any Surface on the refurbished store before. It's always usually last gen stuff. But right now, like you can get a Pro 9 for $639, the entry level model, which is $200 off the retail price. And obviously with Black Friday, when the sales were on, that was an even bigger saving because obviously the retail price had come down, and so they had to also slash the prices of the refurbished models as well. But yeah, just like Apple, Microsoft will inspect the products. They'll ensure that the external chassis is basically brand new, and if there is any damage, any chips, any scratches, they will replace it and give it a new chassis. So to the end user, you're essentially unboxing a new device. The only parts that are used, the components on the inside. And in most cases, Microsoft will also replace the battery as well. So you're getting a healthy battery. You're not getting a used battery, which is always nice. And it comes in new retail packaging. It's not like an open box thing. It will come like shrink wrapped. You got to, open it up like you normally will. So to the end user, there's no reason not to buy refurbished. And also, it's good for the environment, right? It's you're buying a product that was already manufactured. You're not getting Microsoft to manufacture more. And I think ultimately everybody wins. You have to pay less for it. And the reason why this is such a good deal as well is because obviously Microsoft is forced to charge less for them. Microsoft legally isn't allowed to charge retail price for a product that has been opened and used. Most of these are returns from customers who had buyer's remorse, right? You buy a new Surface Pro 9, you go, you use it for a few days, and you go, actually, I'm not spending $1,500 on this. Here you go, Microsoft, have it back. Obviously, that's Microsoft now can inspect it, rebox it, and sell it, but they have to sell it at a significantly reduced price because it has been opened. So, yeah, if you're looking for a new Surface or anything, or any product, just look on the OEM store. A lot of them have refurbished stores, and you can get good deals in there as well. Usually, people don't know about it, but yeah, you can.
And we do have those articles on the site. What was a Surface Go? Was $269 or something like that?
How much? You get a Surface Go 3 for $261, which was a pretty nice. That's a good deal for that.
And then there was a Surface Pro 9 for $639 or
That's
something
right,
like that.
Yeah. Surface Laptop 5 was $649. The Surface Laptop Studio 1 was $1,000. All great, all significantly reduced over what you can buy them new at for right now on the Microsoft Store.
Nice. Yeah, that's like I said, I would have no problem buying that stuff or gifting that stuff. If you need to buy someone a laptop for a student, I would go refurbished. They're not going to know the difference. They get the same warranty and all that kind of stuff. So what's interesting this year about the Black Friday and Cyber Monday from our perspective was it started way earlier. Black Friday started a week before and Cyber Monday ended, but a lot of the major retailers still have sales going on. Like we said, the ROG Ally. There's a couple things too. A couple laptops are cheaper now than they were on Cyber Monday. Part of it's just because the industry is kind of shooting themselves in the foot. Where it used to be like one day you would get Black Friday, and there was just that one day that was stuff was on sale. You had 24 hours, and so everybody got in on that one day. You had to make your decision, and then that was it. The price is returned. Then they were like, well, Cyber Monday. And it was like, so now they extended it. And now it's like the companies are like, we get even earlier. It's like in the US. It's like September starts and you go to the supermarket and it's like Halloween stuff is out. It's like, that's 2 months away. What are you doing? As soon as October 31st ends, it's Thanksgiving and Christmas stuff is out. It's just like, it's totally insane. But the problem is when you do that and you spread it out, people tend to wait longer than to buy stuff because they keep thinking it's just going to get cheaper and cheaper. So I don't know how their industry is going to get themselves out of this rut because they're going to, I think that's why you see sometimes these prices are getting discounted even further now. It's because they didn't sell as much. But we had a very successful day. So
for a little while,
sorry,
real quick, just as an example of why you should check the refurbished store on the Microsoft Store every so often. A few months ago, it's not there anymore, it's out of stock. The Surface Book 3 was on there, which, you can't buy Surface Book 3s new anymore, but obviously with Microsoft repackaging them and stuff, it's essentially a brand new Surface Book 3. But they had like a 16 gig, 15-inch model for like £800. I was like, that's incredible. That's an insane deal for something like that. But so that's why you should always check the refurbished store because you can find just stupid deals and stuff.
Yeah, Samsung does the same too. So I know they have a refurb store as well. Nice. Okay, well, let's get to, I guess, the real news, the OpenAI, Sam Altman, Microsoft drama, which is still kind of continuing, I guess. Do you want to summarize? Well, I'll start off. So the big thing was so after our podcast on Friday, it was Friday night, came the news that, that the board for OpenAI had basically fired Sam Altman. And it came out of nowhere. There was no heads up about this. They said they'd lost trust in him or something, and it was a decision by the board. And it was just kind of chaos there for the next 72 hours. Specifically, Satya Nadella, CEO of Microsoft, of course, was really upset with OpenAI because I guess he was given like a 5 minute heads up before it happened. And Microsoft invested $10 billion into that company and feels like, they're a strategic partner and should have been at least consulted or brought in on this decision. And not only were they not, but they were completely blindsided by it. And this was just days after Sam Altman and Satya were on stage talking about this technology. So that was kind of crazy. And then it picked up from there because it's like, all right, now what? And they appointed some people from the board as new CEO and all this. And then the rumors are like, oh, why did they fire him? And there's all these, kind of rumors and stuff. And then came news that the board was trying to get him back, which is so like, this is just misgovernance, right? This is just one of those things. If you ever make a decision in business, you're supposed to stick to it. You rarely want to do a U-turn on a major decision, whether public or private, because it just shows either you don't have the backbone to stick by what you decided, or your decision was so poorly thought out that you had to reverse the position, right? Uh, and we've seen that happen before. Companies make decisions all the time. They'll undo something, usually like grandfathered plans. They'll, we'll never increase our plans. And then like a year later, oh, we're going to increase our plans. And um, so that's just either or, right? So it makes the board look really terrible. But then during that same period, it was rumored that Microsoft was trying to hire Sam Altman and was going to make him like, they were going to give him like some huge title and be
It
in
wasn't
charge of their
rumored.
like,
Satcher said they
yeah,
were hiring Sam Altman, and they said he would be
yeah,
CEO of a new AI research division at the company.
yeah.
This story is wild because there's so many moving parts, and it moved so quickly, and ultimately nothing changed. Come to the end of it, Sam
Yeah.
Altman's still the CEO of OpenAI, and everybody
Well,
got up in arms over
yeah,
nothing.
stuff did change. So like,
Oh, sure,
yeah, let's
yeah,
step back for a second. So it was funny too, because Microsoft was, I think their LinkedIn offices were not too far, like 10 minutes from where OpenAI was, and they were allocating space and buying
that's
computers
right.
and doing all this stuff. Because what happened was not only Sam Altman was going to go back to Microsoft, all of a sudden like 500 and then 700
Yes,
employees
yeah,
signed a thing saying they're going to go with Sam, and that Microsoft was like, we will hire all of you.
yeah.
So, and then even some of the people that voted Sam out, like, were going to go with Sam. It was like totally bonkers. Now, what ended happening is, Zach is technically right. He just went back as the CEO, but there were changes. Microsoft is now on the board. I believe they have, but they don't have like voting
Yeah,
rights or
they've
something
got a
like that. But
non-voting seat. Yeah.
they're at least now part of that discussion, aware of that discussion, and could participate in that discussion. They just can't vote on it. So there's a couple ways this can go. Obviously, Microsoft was looking to swoop up and grab Sam as well as the entire workforce and just be like, all right, well, we're just going to buy $1 billion company for $0, basically. Um, and then I was saying on Twitter that what they could do, and I wouldn't be surprised if this happens at some point. I don't know if they want to do it so quickly, but there's no reason why OpenAI couldn't sell to Microsoft. Now, I know a lot of people are like, it's a nonprofit, Dan. They can't do that, you dummy. And it's like, well, that's not actually completely true. So the company is actually split into two companies. One, the parent company is nonprofit, but then they split off a subsidiary that's an LLC that is for profit. And this was how it got its capped profit designation. If you don't believe me, this is how technically a nonprofit raised, I don't know, $10 billion from Microsoft. It allowed them to go out and raise capital and make money, but it was capped how much they can make. So they're not going to get rich off of these deals, but it was enough that they could technically make a profit. But the real goal was to get investment, which is how Microsoft entered this story in the first place. So how would they sell off? Well, first of all, even if it was a nonprofit through and through, don't matter. You know, Sam is on the board. Obviously, he's the CEO, And I don't know who's on the board now, but like literally the board could just vote to be like, we're going to change our status from nonprofit to profit, do the paperwork, and then sell themselves off. Like that's completely possible. That could absolutely be done. But they don't even need to do that. That subsidiary is the one that licenses the technology out. It's the one that's handling the chat bots, and they have that service now where you can build your own chats, all that stuff. They could literally just sell that off with the IP to Microsoft, in which case the remaining company would be kind of a shell of what it was, right? But they could absolutely just sell that part to Microsoft. That could happen. It's like, it depends, right? It depends on what Sam Altman, but like, you have to imagine like Sam Altman and Nadella had to have had that discussion. Like, all right, how about this? You go back to OpenAI and then we work on you getting the company to be sold to Microsoft. Like, that could be a possibility. I don't know if that will happen. Maybe Microsoft likes this arrangement, but my hunch is for long-term strategic reasons, and like exactly what happened here, where the company almost like flamed out over one weekend, Microsoft would prefer to be in control of everything and run it that way.
Well,
and they would treat it like LinkedIn, where I think it runs on kind of its own as its own division.
Why would it be more beneficial for Microsoft to acquire OpenAI versus what happened this past weekend or the weekend before, where Microsoft was essentially going to acquire OpenAI for free by hiring everybody at OpenAI? Would that not be more beneficial for Microsoft, because that way they don't have to acquire another company? There's
nope.
no right.
because you don't. If they did that, it would have been cool. It would have been a win. They don't get the IP though.
Yeah, but they're already using OpenAI tech.
Licensed, right? Yeah, but it's licensed from the company, not the employees. The employees don't license it; the company license it. So they would get all the employees, but they wouldn't be getting the technology behind ChatGPT. Now, could those employees go ahead and recreate it all? And
right.
make it even better for Microsoft? Yeah, absolutely. Would that happen overnight? No, it could.
Yeah.
Could the existing OpenAI, like back out or cause them problems? And we already saw during that weekend there was an outage that happened, right? So, them scoring all the employees and Sam Altman would have been a win, but it's not much of a win if they the subsidiary to Microsoft, and along with some of those licenses and IP, so that Microsoft can continue to function. Because Bing and Copilot is based off of that technology, but Microsoft doesn't own that technology. I can tell you, I don't know one single company that would think that's an awesome play to have long term versus just owning the technology.
No, you're right.
Right. So
we should talk a bit about why OpenAI decided to fire Sam Altman. I don't believe there's an official reason. I mean, OpenAI's official reason is that they lost confidence in his leadership. They don't go into detail as to what that means. There's been rumors swirling around left, right, and center as to what they were referring to. I think the most prominent rumor was that they weren't too keen on his vision for making money using the AI, or something along those lines. Sam Altman wanted to
it was at Developer Days. They announced these tools and all that, and it was like a licensing thing. It was going to be money, and some of the employees thought that went against their openness, that hence their name, OpenAI policy.
So there was that aspect. There was another aspect. I don't know if this has any leverage to it, but there was another rumor that there's been a breakthrough at OpenAI that could threaten the future of humanity. And so they fired Sam to stop it from becoming a thing. I don't know if that's true.
And that fades into this bigger criticism that Sam has gone too fast with rolling out ChatGPT to the masses, licensing it to Microsoft, all that without necessarily listening to the employees who didn't basically sign up for that. Mm-hmm. That's the rumor. But then again, it was weird, right? Because he left or was leaving, and then like 700 employees were like, we're going to go with Sam, which that doesn't sound like they were really upset with Sam. So it's like, I don't know how that rumor, I guess they could have been like 100 or 200 holdouts or 10 people who are like, no, we're upset about Sam because of this. But like, if that's the case, it sounds like they were definitely in the minority compared to the rest of the employees.
Yeah. So yeah, that story about the advanced AI thing. I think the report was that they had developed an AI that can solve maths equations, which apparently current AI can't really do. It doesn't really understand maths in that way. So that would have been a big breakthrough, and apparently lead to the end of humanity. So I don't know. I guess it's the start of
Question.
AGI. Is that what it's called? Artificial General
Yeah,
Intelligence, which is the big. That's sort of like the AI that we see in the movies, where it can understand and
that's supposed
think
to be
for itself.
consciousness, where it
Yeah,
replicates human consciousness. Yeah.
I don't think we're there
Um,
yet. I don't know. I don't think
no one
this.
thinks we're there yet.
No.
I think this is a cool rumor.
Yeah,
But I think
it's a
it's
cool
probably,
rumor.
I think what's happens here is a lot of times, listen, this stuff is really complicated, right?
Mm,
And there's like kind of right now two types of people in the world, maybe three. There's the people who know it all and what this stuff means. There's the general populace who has no idea what this means and they're still figuring out what to do with it. You have media in there who are just like, you and me, who are just above those consumers. Like
yeah,
we just read more about this stuff, but we're still not, we don't know. And so I feel like what often happens is sometimes the stuff is so new and foreign that, this news might leak out that something big was happening and it was a breakthrough. And then it got some hyperbole thrown in, and someone in the media took it and made it bigger thing than it is because they don't necessarily understand.
yeah.
That said, there was an engineer at Google, right, who worked on AI and was like, "This thing's alive." It was like
Yeah,
trying to
yeah,
fight for rights for it and all
yeah,
this,
yeah.
and like Google was like, "Hey, buddy, stop." And he's like kept going on and on. They're like, "Hey, buddy, you're fired." So like that was someone who worked on it and who was saying it. That said, since that happens, has Google achieved AGI? Has Google's AI done anything besides have a corny
Isn't
name?
the
I don't know.
general consensus is the AIs are getting worse? They're like capability wise, they're just not as good as they were when they were first announced, like a bunch of months ago. I see that all the time. People saying like Bing Chat and stuff just aren't as capable as they were because of the guardrails and stuff that they've put in place
Mm.
to make it more safe. But as a result of that, it's less fun.
I think right, and I think those things will. And I said that earlier that I think they're going to have stricter guardrails in place, and
Mm,
as they refine the system, they can lessen those guardrails. But for PR reasons, look at the
yeah.
climate we're in,
Yeah.
right? You don't want your AI just doing horrible things and
No,
saying
you're
horrible,
right.
and it already does. It still happens, right? I mean, every once in a while you see a stupid story that break out, like, usually involving Hitler or Nazis and
Yeah.
AI, um, and something like that happens, right? So I think they just want to avoid that. It was actually really funny. I was trying to, I can't really repeat the joke. Well, we don't know the joke. That's the thing. I was so I always leave Family Guy on at night on the background for TV while I'm doing other stuff just because I think it's funny and it's just good background noise, right? And there's this episode where they came across like pretty much one of the most perfect jokes and they would whisper it to each other into each other's ear. So you never heard the joke, but the punchline is like, and you're and you found your lady part reproductive organ in the sink. Which is just like, what? So I was like, oh my God, let me put, so I asked the AI to write the joke where that was the punchline,
Oh God.
but it wouldn't.
Oh
It was
yeah,
like, because it
yeah.
didn't, because of the terminology.
Yeah.
And it was like the anatomically correct terminology. It wasn't like a slang, but it wouldn't do it because it's like a dirty joke kind of
Mm.
thing. But there has to be some AI out there that will do that. But I was like, oh my God, that'd be hilarious to write the joke in reverse. Like we could actually then know what the joke would be. That'd be actually, to me, this is the most important use of AI to date. Like I want it to reverse write a joke on Family Guy. That's all I need in life.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, so
So
yeah, it's not all perfect. But I gave, for those, if you missed the episode 2 weeks ago, the last one we did, I gave a bunch of examples how I use AI all the time for research purposes. I just mean not like science research, but I mean sometimes it is science research, but even pop culture stuff, looking up stuff about song lyrics. Like I do use it a lot. I think it's really impressive technology. It saved me a lot of time uh, on all sorts of aspects of my life. I think it comes down to whether or not how inquisitive you are about the world, And I don't mean that's derogatory. I know some people interpret it that way, but some people just are curious. They're always going
Yeah.
out, they're reading books, watching TV, documentaries, and they want to know about stuff. And this is perfect for that. If you're one of those people who are just like come home, pop open a can of beer, watch the football game, don't care about the news, and even if you watch just football, like though, you can totally use it to be like ask it random trivia questions about like who was the best quarterback in 1984 and all this kind of stuff. Like it's amazing to be able to do that. So I don't know.
Yeah. So real quick, right back to the Sam Altman story. There's a couple more sort of things I want to hit on before we move on from it.
Sure.
One of the things about it was when Sam was fired. Obviously the board have rehired him now as CEO, and he's basically back in the position he was before he was fired. But that decision, I think, only really came about because OpenAI as a company sort of threw I don't know what you'd call it. Like 700 employees would agreed to follow Sam to Microsoft, as you mentioned. Had that response not been that way, had maybe only say 100 OpenAI employees done that, I still think Sam would be fired from OpenAI right now, because I don't. I think the only reason that the OpenAI board reconsidered is because most of the company sort of were outraged by the decision. I also want to mention how the genius play of Satya Nadella, who came out very quickly on Saturday on Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it, to basically announce that they were hiring Sam Altman. His wording in his tweet implies that the decision has been made and he is being hired as a Microsoft employee. Not only that, he was being hired as a relatively high up Microsoft employee. He would have been as the CEO of a new AI research and development org at Microsoft, which they were forming especially for him. So goodbye to the existing AI org, I guess. I don't know what was going to happen there. But I don't actually know if when Satya made that announcement that if it was locked in. I assume there was a conversation happening behind the scenes. Right. But I think he didn't want to hire Sam anyway. I think what he was trying to do was get the OpenAI board to realize that he's a valuable asset, and firing him is a mistake. If you fire him, you're going to lose him to us, and by the looks of it, a lot of more employees are going to follow him, and so you guys need to reconsider. And I think his game worked there. Like this idea of him publicly announcing the hiring of Sam and the co-founder Greg Brockman they were both being hired, and they're a key asset to this whole vision of OpenAI and AI like this in general. And then obviously 500 of OpenAI employees agreed to follow, then 700, and then Microsoft came out and said, "Listen, we'll hire you all. We're creating office space for you as we speak." I think the OpenAI board realized that they were making a huge mistake. And I just think it's wild how that it moved all so quickly, and Satya was like very public about it, which is, it's quite rare for Satya to be public about sort of company issues, and especially with partners. But he was at the forefront of this. His statements were there. He was making tweets. He did interviews about this. Like, what the hell? Like, they rolled him out straight away to sort of control the narrative, even though he technically doesn't own a single part of OpenAI. As somebody in the comments just mentioned, with all due respect, Microsoft wants to own and run everything, and there lies the problem. That all the control by one company is never good for a competitive and fair marketplace. It is true that Microsoft owns a lot of companies, especially in gaming these days. But I don't think this is that, only because there are other tech companies working on AI already. It's not like OpenAI is the only one. OpenAI is the biggest one, I think.
And you can't demonstrate even close that Microsoft has a monopoly even on it.
No, it doesn't.
I mean, because when it comes to search use, they're the exact same as they were basically last year.
It's actually genius, this, because somehow Microsoft is viewed as at the forefront of this next generation AI push, yet isn't building technology. I mean, it's working with OpenAI, but it's OpenAI's technology. It isn't Microsoft's technology. Obviously, Google's building its own thing, and Amazon's rumored to be building its own thing, and Apple's doing whatever Apple does these days. But Microsoft is at the forefront with a technology that it doesn't own, at least currently. We'll see where we are in a couple of years if they do acquire OpenAI. But they've managed to do that without monopolizing or without having an actual product in the market that competes. They're just building services on top of somebody else's tech, and that I think is crazy.
And let's be clear here, Microsoft got ahead of this. They were in 2019, it was $10 billion, and also gave OpenAI access to its supercomputers to train this stuff on. Microsoft was just ahead of the game.
Yeah.
That phrase, all due respect, Microsoft wants to own and run everything, and there lies the problem. I talked about that 2 weeks ago. But let's replace Microsoft with every company on the planet wants to own and run everything. Literally, this is the rant I had. It was literally the point of in capitalism, every company, there's not a single company that's like, oh no, we never want to be dominant. We would actually like a fair marketplace where we're all competing. We have more companies. Like they may even say that publicly, but no one means that because every company wants to be the monopoly because why wouldn't you? It's only up to society and government to step in and say, no, you can't do that. But that said, I don't think that's the case here at all because
Yeah.
AI is so new. You can't even come close to demonstrating that Microsoft has anything close to a monopoly on AI. You can't. You could say that they get the most attention,
Yeah.
maybe, but that's about it in terms of usage. But Zach's right. Facebook is doing it, Amazon's doing it, Google's doing it. For God's sakes, Elon Musk is doing it with Twitter. Oh, so corny. Actually, did you see what Sam Altman dunked on
I did not know.
Musk? So Elon Musk dunked on Altman, who they go back, right?
Yeah,
Musk was on the board for OpenAI. OpenAI didn't want to make Musk like CEO, so he left. That's
great.
So then he created Rock, which is so original. Apparently, that's the AI from Hitchhiker's Guide, which I've never read, but whatever. But he made it so it's sarcastic and basically tells dad jokes. And so he gave an example, and he was just like, he dunked on Altman like, your AI is so boring, look how funny this one is. Like you couldn't prompt OpenAI to be like, make corny dad joke. Like it totally would, right? And that's what Altman did. He was like, he prompted it to do that and dunk on Elon Musk. So it was just a funny back and forth though. But my point is there's a lot of this stuff coming out there. It doesn't mean someone's going to eventually figure out another breakthrough in this. And that, again, doesn't mean monopoly, right? But there's a lot of money. Actually, my bet on this would be also don't count out China. China's going crazy with this stuff, and they're not as keen on regulation and having that public discussion because they're a monopoly. They're their own monopoly. So we'll see where all this stuff goes.
It's funny. The whole idea of Microsoft being a monopoly is you can say that was the case in like the late 90s, early 2000s. You cannot say it today. Azure isn't even the biggest server service. There's Azure. I think Azure is
the
bigger.
most growth.
Yeah, they certainly have the most growth for sure, but they are Amazon is the king in that department, and obviously with Xbox is third place, maybe second place these days, I don't know, but certainly not first, and they're certainly not dominant in the gaming space either. And then the only area where you could even argue Microsoft has a dominant product is in the desktop OS space, obviously PCs, Windows, but even then it's like Windows
and that market's declining.
It's a declining market, and no one's really interested in it. Everyone's more interested in phones.
Declining as a whole, but within it, the market share of Microsoft is also going down slightly.
Yeah, it is.
Mac OS is slowly ticking up, and then you have Chrome OS is slowly ticking up. Like you have competition there. You can't argue that. Like Google can't argue that Microsoft is blocking them in the laptop space. Not even close. OEMs are jumping on board, releasing exclusive Chromebooks and all that. Right now, the issue with Chrome OS, it's its own making. It's its own limitations. It has that same value proposition, what it can do versus what you're paying for it. It's like people will pay like $500 for a Chromebook. All right, that's fine. That makes sense. And then it's like $1,200 for a Chromebook. You're like, whoa. And it still can't like run real apps, like I'll just buy a Windows machine then at that point or a Mac. Yeah, but you're right. I think people conflating large company with monopoly, which often can run in parallel. Right, that's usually the case. When AT&T was famously broke up, it was because they were the largest in telecom, but that's not necessarily the case. You could still be a very large company that's just very diversified, which is what I would say Microsoft is. Google, on the other hand, is a very large company, and I think it's like 80% is like search, right? And out of it's not even search. Search is the cover term for advertising. That's what their real business is. Uh, that's where they could be considered kind of a monopoly, or where the argument
Yeah.
is. So just because Microsoft is large and has a large market cap doesn't mean they're a monopoly on any specific thing, as Zach just pointed out.
Yeah. So yeah, I guess that's the AI OpenAI Sam Altman Microsoft saga, which is hopefully over now, and obviously we'll keep an eye on OpenAI and see if Microsoft does eventually try to acquire them. I think it's
Yeah,
a likely path that they're going to go down at this point, right?
I I'd be curious. Like, I don't know why they wouldn't pursue this. I think the thing is, you it's kind of like if you're dating someone, like you don't want to just break up and like immediately start dating someone else then like the day after, because then it looks like you
Yeah,
had
yeah,
something planned.
yeah.
Right? You got to give it a little breathing room. I don't think they would want to bring Sam back. They either had to do it right away, like Sam went back and that night they decided to sell, or they're going to have to wait a couple months, wait to things simmer down, and then come up with like a strategic, oh, we're just decided to make this happen, and make them uncouple it from this whole event. Uh, I would be shocked if they're not trying to do that. Because again, I don't see why Microsoft would not want to just own that stuff. Um, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. It's a fun space. All right, let's go to Windows 11 preview builds. I guess there were a few of them. I have not followed this at all, so I'll just turn this over to Zach.
Yes. So new week, new builds. Dev channel and Canary channel got some stuff. We'll start with the dev channel build. Build 23595. The button. The Copilot button, which has previously been present right next to the star button on the taskbar, is now moving to the system tray. We've talked about this before. It's now officially in testing in the builds. So yeah, that's where it's going to live now. It's going to be on the far right of the taskbar. That's where it is on Windows 10, and that's where it's moving on Windows 11. Works exactly the same. You click it, brings out a sidebar. It's just now present in the system tray. I don't know how much I like the change. I think that it looks really out of place when it's next to the date and time. The date and time sort of layout needs to be adjusted for it to look nicer, I think. But this is something they can look at a later date. Let's see what else was here. That was basically it for the dev channel build, to my knowledge. Yes. The more interesting stuff is in the Canary channel build 26002. Not sure why they couldn't have just rolled out build 26,000, but hey, there you go. Thanks, Microsoft. The first one is they are introducing a new feature called Energy Saver, which builds off Battery Saver. So I had actually heard a bit about this for Windows VNext. This is a Hudson Valley thing. I'd seen it in some Hudson Valley docs. This is supposed to... Right, so I'll talk about what they're saying in the blog post, and I can sort of elaborate on it a bit further, I guess. So it is an easy way to extend battery life and reduce energy use by trading off some system performance. It can toggle on and off via quick settings in the system tray, or be configured to run automatically whenever the device reaches a certain battery percentage. While optimized to extend battery life, Energy Saver will be available when PCs are plugged in, including desktop PCs, for those aiming to conserve energy all the time. So how this differs from Battery Saver is that this actually, I think, will lower system performance. So if your CPU is clocked at a certain gigahertz, it will run it lower, so it's not using as much power. And there's a few reasons for it. One, obviously, that it increases battery life because the battery doesn't have to work as hard to power the CPU or GPU or whatever. But two, it also means you're using less power from the grid. This is kind of what this is all about. It's all about being more carbon neutral, I guess, or trying to be. I've heard, or based on the stuff that I've read on these internal documents, this will at some point even tie into the thing that Windows Update ties into, where it will be able to sort of talk with local electricity providers and turn on Energy Saver when the energy you're pulling from the wall is considered green energy. Stuff like that. So they're really, really trying to tap into this whole idea of reducing carbon emissions and stuff. That part of it hasn't been announced yet, to my knowledge. But like I said, this will be applicable on any Windows PC, whether it's a laptop or a desktop. So even if it's a PC without a battery, you can still go in and enable Energy Saver because it will reduce your system usage and pull less power from the wall as a result. So that's really nice. And this will obviously be amazing. In the docs that I've read, apparently Energy Saver will increase battery life by up to 50% on ARM devices. So that'll be interesting to see. But yeah, so that's a cool change they're adding to Energy Saver. They're also making some changes to the quick settings panel. So the quick settings flyout should have better performance in this build now. They're also making it easier to manage VPNs via the quick access panel, and they're also beginning to roll out a new refresh button in the quick settings Wi-Fi panel, so you can refresh the list of wireless networks whenever you're looking in there, which is kind of cool. There's some account-related notifications coming to the settings app. So I guess that will just give you like a pop-up whenever you haven't got 2FA set up or OneDrive backup isn't working properly and stuff like that, which is kind of cool. And then they've made some minor changes to other areas of the system as well. In regards to app updates, Microsoft is rolling out a new update to the Xbox app, which introduces a full screen mode, which is essentially translates to a mode that works better for gaming handhelds, as Dan was talking about at the top of the show, for the Asus Ally and stuff. Yeah. The biggest complaint with the Windows-based gaming handhelds right now is Windows sucks on them. The UI is not optimized. It's kind of a nightmare to navigate.
So I just want to pause here a sec. I would not use the word sucked. I get what people are saying, but I've been pleasantly surprised because these default to tablet mode when in use.
That's right.
And tablet mode is not terrible. Like I think people are. It's a little harsh to say it sucks. Because the way I think it sucks is like back in the Windows 8 days, and they would put it on a 7-inch tablet, and it was just like the full OS, and it was all tiny and stuff like that. Like I actually have found using Windows on this thing pretty cool because the buttons are larger, everything is brought up. It's not terrible. Is there room for improvement? Of course, there's a ton. So I don't want to distract from that argument, but it's a lot better than I thought it would be. I'll just say that.
Yeah, well, the Xbox app has added that full screen mode now, which essentially just makes it easier to navigate using a controller or a touch screen and launch games, essentially. And I think it only works with Microsoft Store downloaded games right now. Hopefully they expand that to Steam and stuff. But that's cool that they're at least looking at it via the Xbox app. I would much prefer if they looked at it from a Windows shell perspective, but
yeah,
I guess that's, beggars can't be choosers at this point. So there you go. That's the Windows 11 stuff. Not too much going on right now. Obviously, we are gearing up for the next version of Windows. We're slowly but surely getting there. The timeline for Windows Hudson Valley right now is, I think, feature complete is expected to be in January, late January. And then an RTM is expected in April, to my knowledge. I can't remember now. Now, that doesn't mean we're going to see everything in January. Of course, Microsoft does develops Windows in mysterious ways these days, and there's lots of undocked undocked components from the OS that get developed independently from the builds that you get. And so, although there may be a final build in April, we may not see any of it until Microsoft is ready to announce the next Windows 11 update, which is, that could happen late April, early May, sometime around then. And obviously, we know it's all going to be AI focused. A lot of it will depend on new hardware that isn't out yet, such as the Snapdragon X Elite and the upcoming Intel 14th Gen stuff. But yes, I am working on stories detailing what exactly to expect with regards to that, which I'm hoping to publish in the next couple of weeks. But yeah, that's the latest on Windows 11. Dan, what are your thoughts on the energy saver stuff?
Yeah, I think it's cool. So obviously, this is more for desktop use. And it sounds like an extension of they already have energy savings in
Battery
Windows.
Saver. Yeah.
No. I'm not talking about. There's
yes, I know what you mean. Yeah,
energy recommendations.
That's right. Yeah, you're
right. So
you
go to energy recommendations. There's set the power mode for best energy efficiency, and you can just hit a box to check apply all, or you can do selectors. Put my device to sleep after 10 minutes. Turn off my screen after 3 minutes. Automatically put my device to sleep when I leave. That's by the way, that's because my display here, this is the Dell 6K 32-inch, which I still recommend is the best monitor out there. I should write that post, actually. I did review it. But it has human presence detection in it. So when I walk away from the computer, it automatically turns the monitor into standby. And as soon as I walk back in front of it, it will pop back on. And turn off my screensaver, which is funny that people still use screensavers, I guess. So I think this is an extension of that. Like for instance, there's the power mode for you have even on desktop. There's now best power efficiency, balanced, or best performance. I don't know why it just. Oh, okay, yeah. So now I have a Core i9 14th gen, right? So for the things I do on it, I can run it in power efficiency, and I probably won't notice my tabs slowing down. But I think that's where this is an extension of. So whereas Battery Saver was for laptops, this is more for desktops, and they're looking to, yeah, reduce the amount of power computers draw. It also helps keep the computer more quiet, of course. And let's not forget the environmental thing. You got to pay for electricity.
Yeah.
Like,
Oh, yeah.
so if you leave your computer on like all the time or using it all the time, this will help reduce your bills as well. They did this with Xbox too, right? There was the energy efficiency stuff there. So I think all this is actually really good. I think it's smart. It's completely optional. So I could run my computer. I can go to the old control panel and put best performance on and just let her fly and drive up my electric bill. So I think this is kind of cool stuff. I don't mind Copilot being moved. I think that's actually a smart idea. We've talked about that previously. And then you touch on compact mode and tablet mode for Windows, which, as I was just saying, it can definitely be better, but I actually find it pretty good. The Xbox compact mode, I'm looking forward to using. It was already kind of fine on it,
Yeah.
but it wasn't nearly as optimized for that kind of input and usage. So now looking forward to try it now. Valve already did this with the Steam app, so the Steam app can run in desktop mode on these like ROG Ally or Lenovo Legion Go, and it looks exactly pretty much like the Steam Deck when you turn it on, which is kind of nice. So this stuff is getting better. That's the issue with these handhelds is management of games, and Lenovo has its own software that shows your entire game library. So this stuff is getting better, but should Microsoft devote resources to, making the OS better? We talked about that before. It's chicken egg, right? The market, I can tell you, for handhelds is pretty small right now, right? Because it's so new, and it's people. So if I told you Lenovo Legion Go, if you told most people that, they have no idea what that means. I mean, it's like, okay, it's something portable. Asus ROG Ally, like you got nothing from that title, right? Who knows what that is? I think as these devices become more popular, and I should say if they become more popular, we don't know how well they're going to sell, you'll see Microsoft start to put resources towards it. But then it could be, reverse, right? If, say, Microsoft made the operating system perfect for these devices, would they then sell more of them? I'm not sure. I'm really not sure. I feel like right now the people buying these still that hardcore PC gamer type people. Even Steam Deck is still a little bit in that category, but you are starting to head more into Nintendo Switch territory, which is anyone can use this thing. But I think as the market shifts and they see demand for these things, they'll start to shift resources. I hope we see more of them. I think it's really cool. But yeah, we'll see.
Yeah. Right, real quick, I need to quickly read this week's sponsor. When it comes to hiring, don't wait for great talent to find you. Find them first with Indeed. When you're hiring, you need Indeed. Indeed is the hiring platform where you can attract, interview, and hire all in one place. Instead of spending hours on multiple job sites searching for candidates with the right skills, Indeed is a powerful hiring platform that can help you do it all. They streamline hiring with powerful tools that find you match candidates, and with Instant Match, over 80% of employers get quality candidates whose resumes on Indeed matches their job description the moment they sponsor a job, according to Indeed data. Even better, Indeed is the only job site where you only pay for applications that meet your must-have requirements. Indeed is an unbelievably powerful hiring platform, delivering 4 times more hires than all other job sites combined, according to Talent Nest. So join more than 3 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great talent fast. Start hiring now with a $75 sponsored job credit to upgrade your job post at Indeed.com/WCP. That offer is good for a limited time only. Again, that's a $75 credit now at Indeed.com/WCP. Just go to Indeed.com/WCP and support the show by saying you heard about it on this podcast. Indeed.com/WCP. Terms and conditions do apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed. Thank you, Indeed, for sponsoring. And now we can move on and talk about the other Surface device that Microsoft didn't talk about this year. The new one. If you remember when they announced these new Surfaces, they only talked about the Laptop Go 3 and the Laptop Studio 2 on stage. And then they also unveiled, well, they didn't even unveil, but they also started selling Surface Go 4 and Surface Hub 3. Sadly, Microsoft didn't send a Surface Hub 3 for me to review, but they did send, finally, Surface Go 4, which I am now in the process of reviewing. They did only send the tablet, so I don't even have a keyboard to go with it. So I'm reviewing it, the Surface Go, as nature intended, as a tablet.
Wait, didn't you sold your Surface Go?
Yeah, I sold my Surface Go ages ago. Yeah. When I got a Pro X, I wasn't using the Surface Go anymore, so I basically traded it in towards it. But yeah. So Surface Go 4. I forgot how much I like this size. So it's 10.5 inches still. The Surface Go hasn't changed from a form factor perspective since basically the second version onwards, or you can even count the first version. The second version added the slightly larger 10.5 inch screen, and it's remained the same ever since. It's incredibly lightweight, it's just fun. Surface Go is fun. I do think this is the best 2-in-1 Surface. I think it beats the Surface Pro in regards to portability and just general form factor. I think this form factor makes more sense as a 10.5 inch or 11 inch sort of screen size versus 13 inches, which is what the Surface Pro is. The screen on it's great. And the biggest thing with Surface Go right now is Go 4 at least is the updated chip on the inside, Intel N200, paired with 64 gigs of UFS storage and 8 gigs of RAM out of the box. So no longer is there a 4 gig option; it's now just 8 gigs, which is good news because obviously 4 gigs is not very good these days, and 8 gig is a lot better, a lot more headroom for lightweight tasks and multitasking and stuff like that. So my first impressions of it are. Yeah, the upgraded specs make a difference. This thing, I think you could daily this thing now. If this was your only Windows PC, I think you could get by with it as long as you're doing things that are relative to the Intel N200. That being web browsing, email, working in Office, joining meetings in Teams or Slack or something like that. It can now do all of those things like you would expect any Windows PC to be able to do. Whereas before, things like the Surface Go 3, if you're using the Intel Pentium version, that wouldn't be the case. It would chug quite a bit, especially the entry-level models with 4 gigs of RAM. That, multitasking becomes a lot more difficult on that with 4 gigs. But with 8 gigs, it's less of a problem. Now, it's not perfect still. It does get warm. They've not. I don't think they've updated the thermals at all in this, and so they put more powerful chip in it. It's getting a little bit toasty now, especially when you're running it under load. But again, if you're not, I've only really noticed that when benchmarking, when doing things normally, it doesn't get hot at all. There's no fan. It runs silent, which is nice. Has an excellent webcam in it and stuff. Windows Hello, which is really nice to see at this price point. The other thing I wanted to mention is battery life is surprisingly good. I've ran a battery test in it already. It got 10 hours in the PC Mark 10 battery test, which is really not bad for an Intel processor on a device this small. So whatever they're doing some optimizations here to make it last as long as it does. But yeah, my overall impressions are I really like this. I forgot how nice the Surface Go is. I understand why Microsoft keeps this line around because it is fun, and I can see why. I heard from sources that the Surface Go is Microsoft's most popular enterprise product. They shift hundreds of thousands of these every month. And yeah, I can see why. These are great. For first-line workers, these are amazing. They're just so fun and easy to sort of just pick up and use. It's the closest thing to an iPad that Microsoft has. It's just a shame Windows isn't as fluid as iPad OS is, because that would, if we had an OS as fluid as iPad OS on here, this would be a dream. But obviously Windows is still a little bit clunky in regards to tablets, and it's also a little bit clunky in regards to small screen sizes, as we were just sort of talking about. It's not too bad on a 10.5-inch panel. There are some optimizations. So obviously we've got tablet mode and stuff where the taskbar gets bigger and stuff. But there's also a mode that Microsoft does talk about where apps open full screen automatically on here. And I believe that's a behavior for anything with less than 11 inches of screen size. If you have like a 10.5 inch or a 10 inch screen on running Windows 11, apps just open full screen. And that's not a feature you can configure, to my knowledge. I think that's just how it is. Which is, I like it. I prefer it because I think when you're at this screen size, you kind of do want to run things in full screen anyway. You're not going to run them in tiny windows on the desktop. It makes no sense. But yeah, so Surface Go 4 first impressions, really nice upgrade. It's a shame this is for commercial customers only. That doesn't really mean much. You can still go to the Microsoft Store and order one yourself if you want to, and I would recommend doing that if you are looking at buying a Surface Go right now. Don't buy the Surface Go 3 unless you can find a significant discount. Buy the Surface Go 4 because I think it will last you longer. Headroom wise, you've got more RAM out of the gate. You've got a much better processor, faster storage. That UFS storage is huge. It's so much better than the eMMC storage you find on the entry level Surface Go 3. It's night and day. So yeah, that's my impressions of the Surface Go 4. Really nice bit of hardware. I still think it's the best Surface 2-in-1 Microsoft makes.
So with all that, specifically that Go 4 wasn't a consumer play this year, although it seems like a pretty decent upgrade, but it would have been a tough sell overall as a new device, right? This is really almost a Surface Go 3 Plus,
Yeah,
right? You can
absolutely.
think of it.
Yep.
So with that, what are you hearing about the next consumer version and what we can expect? I mean, first of all, I guess if they're going to go with ARM, it needs to be able to beat the performance of that one, right?
Yeah, so that's I've heard a few contradicting things at this point. I think a lot's in the air now that Panos is out the door. Obviously, with under Panos, the plan was they were going to do a Surface Go 4 with ARM. That was the plan. It would have had a Snapdragon 7C processor in it. And I'd also heard around the same time that they were also working on an 11-inch Surface Pro. And I think the plan was to have an 11-inch Surface Pro and a 10.5-inch Surface Go exist side by side, but have cross-compatible accessories, which would have meant a slight update to the Surface Go's design for it to support the newer type cover, which would have been redesigned for the Pro 11-inch as well, which would have also most likely had support for the Slim Pen. Assuming that's still the plan and it's just been delayed, that's kind of what we can expect for the next Surface Go. An ARM chip on the inside with updated accessories in regards to a new type cover, maybe support for the Slim Pen, because right now Surface Go 4 here, it supports Surface Pen still, but it's the old Surface Pen. It's the round one that attaches to the side and doesn't wirelessly charge. That works fine, but obviously the current actively developed Surface Pen is the Surface Slim Pen 2 with the haptics and stuff. And obviously that would make more sense here on Surface Go as well. One of the reasons why they didn't do that is because obviously Surface Slim Pen is way more expensive than the classic Surface Pen. I think you can get the classic Surface Pen for $100 these days new, whereas the Slim Pen is $150, I think, something like that. It's quite a bit more expensive, so they need to bring prices down there because obviously the Surface Go, especially, its main main customer is enterprises and education. Education being a sector that doesn't have much money, so those need to be cheaper so that they can buy in bulk and it makes more sense for them monetarily. So yeah, I think that's what we can probably expect with the next one. At the very least, ARM. I think ARM's going to be in the next one. I think that Microsoft is in a bit of a tricky state here because originally the plan was to put a 7C chip in here, but now that Qualcomm's moving on to the Snapdragon X series, it's less. I don't think there is a 7C chip now. I think the 7C and the 8C are going away, right? I think they're just going to go with X series full time.
They haven't really said.
Right, I'm pretty sure that the plan is to move away from the 7 Series and 8C.
Yeah, I think that is the plan. Like we talked about that a couple podcasts ago, that this is just one SKU called Elite, but they can definitely go from 12 cores to 8 cores to even 4 cores, scale down to match like the 7Cs and 8Cs that we had before. And of course, they could scale up. How fast they do that and how fast they can get them to market, I'm not sure. They did, we even mentioned this, but the original plan, when Qualcomm bought Nuvia, they publicly said, we're going to make our own in-house chips. If they're good, we'll use them and basically switch over to them. If they're not, though, we still reserve the right to license from ARM and continue with those chips, or maybe even do both. But during Hawaii, they flat out said, come back next year, because they are putting that into their phones. And they said they're going to scale it. They're going to put it into automobiles. They're going to put it into AR glasses. So they already said they're putting that chip everywhere. So you're right. I think they're so happy with it that the plan was maybe they'll switch over, but I think now the plan is they will switch over. Now the question is, can they bring that price point down?
Right, that's the big
to
thing.
Say a 4-core and compete with where Intel is. So, when that would happen.
There's two.
That's not going to happen by spring.
Yeah, there's two elements to it. There's one, the price one's the biggest one. Because Surface Go is $399. Can you get an Orion chip in something like that? I currently no. Maybe in the future, yes. So that's one of the issues. The other one is the X series chips are quite a bit more powerful than what you find in a Surface Go currently. To the point where they might actually even be too hot for this. Like Microsoft needs to redesign it now versus when it was a 7C, which was essentially just a mobile, like a phone chip, right? That would have gone in here just fine. But now with the X series, it needs to be reworked, and so there's a lot more going back to the drawing board than was originally considered for this ARM Surface Go. But to my knowledge, that's still the plan. I have heard that the plan is, if there's a Surface PC, there's an ARM option in that Surface PC. This idea of it just being Intel only or AMD only or whatever is old Surface. New Surface is, if there's a Surface, there will be an Intel option, there will be an ARM option. Ideally, there'll be an AMD option. I have no idea if that's actually in the plan, but Intel and ARM will be offered in Surface PCs going forward, and that should be starting next year with the Surface Pro and Surface Laptop. Again, we'll talk more about that when I get the article out in the next couple of weeks. But yeah, so that's that was Surface Go 4.
Nice. All right. Quickly, due to ugly sweater this year, the Bliss. I don't think this was too surprising. Although it's funny because traditionally these are ugly sweaters, and you can make the argument that the Bliss isn't necessarily an ugly sweater.
Yeah.
Because it's a famous image that a lot of people, we know, our own Ben Wilson, he still uses the Bliss wallpaper and variations of it on his computers. So a lot of people consider it to be this beautiful and iconic image. So I'm not sure it's necessarily ugly on a sweater, maybe a little bit out of place. But personally, I kind of think unless your sweater is a solid color, preferably a dark color, like black or anything, I think it's an ugly sweater.
Yeah.
I just don't like sweaters. I did as a kid, though. I loved them. So them going with this, I think, was an interesting choice. Call back to obviously one of their most prized, iconic designs that they're famous with. It does go for not cheap. It's $69, although it's
They're
good
already
quality sweater.
sold out, so there's no point.
Oh, they already sold out.
Yeah,
Wow. Okay. And we should mention, out of that $69, though, it went to a charity too, right?
That's right. Yep.
What was the charity?
The Nature Conservatory, I believe. Yes. So there you are.
Well, that's the story. Sorry, you didn't get one.
I'm annoyed that they went with the Bliss wallpaper. They've already done a Windows XP one. I don't know why they circled back around to Windows XP.
Well, someone brought up in comments an excellent idea, which was make a Zune one.
Yes, Zune one is. I absolutely would have done a Zune one or Windows Phone. I'm just saying.
They need to do, well, they should do both. They need to do Zune HD. So it'd be like a black sweater with the orange and pink accents running through it and the logo. That would actually not be an ugly. That would be still kind of an ugly sweater, but I think that'd be a cool looking ugly. That would look like a retro sweater.
The ones that need to do, they need to do Windows Phone, they need to do Zune, and they need to do Windows Vista. Yeah. I think Vista's at that point now where it's more meme than bad memories, and so they can sort of meme on it and be like, oh, here's the Vista trailer because it's ugly and stuff like that. I think they should do next. I don't know why they haven't.
I think, yeah. So, let's see, how do I say this? Clippy was verboten for a long time with Microsoft.
Yeah, he was.
Like, you're not talking about it. They didn't mention it. And, because it was an embarrassment for them and it was the butt of jokes. And then at some point within the last few years, nostalgia kicked in and people liked bringing it up and not in a sort of like in a mean way. And then Microsoft kind of embraced it. And that's why they did the sweater. I don't think they're there yet with Windows Phone. Phone, the wounds are still too deep. I think, knowing our audience, they would see that, be like, what if this is a sign?
Yeah, you're right. You're not wrong.
That they're going to get back into making Windows Phone. And I don't think they want to have that conversation. I don't think they want to talk about how smartphones, which are still very popular, and they don't have an answer there. And this is a reminder of how bad they screwed it up.
Yeah.
Zune, at least, they did fold out of Zune, but you can argue that market was already collapsing.
Yeah, it's gone now. Yeah, no one's making.
After all,
players.
The Zune HD was literally the precursor for Windows Phone 7, right? Like, if you ever had a Zune HD, you're like, oh, this is basically a Windows Phone. When you got a Windows Phone, you're like, this is basically a Zune.
Yeah.
So maybe they can, with Zune, I don't think it's as, and they did, thanks to Scott Hanselman, they just did bring support back for transferring files on Windows with Zune.
That's right.
With the drivers. So I think Zune would be a good candidate for next year.
I agree. Think that would be... we should put that petition in on Twitter now. Zune next year, ugly sweater is a Zune. Although I guess it's not technically a Windows ugly sweater. It's a Microsoft Zune ugly sweater. Does it have to be Windows themed? I mean, Zoom ran Windows, right? Technically, it ran Windows
Right,
CE
yeah.
or something, whatever it was back then. Yeah, I think you're right. I think they need to do Zoom before they can even think about Windows Phone. But I also think they
I
can do
wouldn't mind them.
Vista. I don't see the
They
problem
could
with
do the
Vista.
modem, Windows modem.
Modem.
Yeah, the modem app.
Really? That's such a...
Because that was so critical for internet
No, it
back in the
was.
day.
Yeah, no, don't get me wrong. I see it, but that
The
is
little phone thing, like I
yeah,
don't know.
dial up. Yeah. It could be. What about Microsoft Band? That's probably too fresh as well, right? Windows Phone and Band sort of fall under the same thing.
Yeah. Oh yeah, no, Microsoft Band. No one would even know what that meant.
That's true. That's a bit too niche, isn't it? It's such a shame.
Yeah,
Band
that's
was
very
so
niche.
good. So good. Oh
Media
well.
Center, maybe.
No, that's no. Media Center's dumb. Nobody used it ever.
Oh, the Media Center fans, I don't know, man. They were hardcore. I'd watch what you say.
It's
But
true.
anyway, maybe we'll do a poll on the Windows Central account, and we'll try to shape the poll to get Zune as the
Yeah.
nominee for next year. Uh, I guess moving on to thing of the week. I just have two things. I guess I've been watching how Fall of the House of Usher. Um, which is done by, I always forget the guy's name. Oh, come on. Just give me the name of the person. Mike Flanagan. There it is. So Mike Flanagan has done a bunch of stuff for Netflix already. Obviously kind of horror. So he's done oh yeah, the anthology series The Haunting, which consists of The Haunting of Hill House, The Haunting of Bly Manor, and there's a different one. I don't know why it's called. Oh, it's just an anthology. Those are both good on Netflix. I didn't know that. A season based on the horror novella The Turn of the Screw. Oh, interesting. So these are kind of loosely based on other stories. He did the horror miniseries Midnight Mass, which I mentioned a couple podcasts ago, which was really, really good. He did the Midnight Club, which I still have not watched. I believe, Zach, you said you saw that?
Sorry, what?
The Midnight Club?
No, I've not seen that.
Oh, okay. So that was that was going to be like a regular series, but it got canceled after series one, unfortunately.
That's a shame.
But the Fall of House of Usher is his new one on Netflix. It is so good. Uh, it's something about his stuff. It always builds slow. So the first like two or three episodes, you're like, all right, this is kind of interesting, but it's not great. But then it just picks up and it just goes, and it's just like it's not completely like gross horror, but there's some, it's adult horror. Let's just say that. But the stories are so good, leaves you guessing. You have no idea where things are going. The acting is just phenomenal. Just really good cast of actors this time. He reuses a lot of the same cast from his other series, which is kind of cool because sometimes you don't even recognize the people. They just do such a good of switching roles. But it's just a highly recommend start watching that. The other one is I haven't seen yet because it's not released yet, but is Godzilla minus one. I'm a huge Godzilla fan. I just love them. I think they're great. And a lot of people don't realize like the original Godzilla and some of them have like really serious, like the original Godzilla movie is about like Japan coming to terms with what it did in World War II, like in the real world. And the atomic age, and Godzilla was literally a representation of Mother Nature punishing them. Like only Japan would make a movie that self-flagellates so much, right? But that's what Godzilla was a metaphor. And they've done there can't be ones. Don't get me wrong with like Mecha Godzilla and stuff, but I just find the series great. But every once in a while, they've kind of rebooted it in the last couple of years again. And I'm not talking about the American ones. The American ones have been meh, but the new ones are kind of cool. They're building their own monster verse here in the United States. That's where you see Monarch now is on Apple. It's part of that, right? So this is the new one, Godzilla minus one. This is actually looks like a clean reboot again. There was Shin Godzilla a couple of years ago, which could be related to this, but Shin Godzilla takes place more in current times. This is, again, World War II. And it goes back to sort of the original roots of the original movie. So the reason I'm bringing it up, though, because this is rare. It's getting extremely good reviews. Like right now on Rotten Tomatoes. So it is being released here in the United States, I believe, in the first or second week of December. It's got 97% rating on Rotten Tomatoes from 37 professional reviews. like in Japan, there were like reviews of people crying during it, and like they said the drama story is just so good in it, and like, and that Godzilla is awesome too. But it's getting back to the original thing where Godzilla is basically representing, um, um, you know, not revenge, but punishment against Japan for its crimes it committed and stuff. So I would, when you start seeing the commercials for it and you see it in your movie theater, don't roll your eyes and be like, "Oh, it's a guy in a rubber suit." It's not that. Their CGI has definitely stepped up its game now. It looks really good, but the story is supposed to be just super incredible. Like 97% from critics. Like they'll get like I could see audience, because maybe you get a lot of the Godzilla fans, they would give it a pass, right? But they have convinced critics that this is like one of the best Godzilla films ever made. I think it's crazy. So I'm going to recommend that. I'll go watch it probably a couple of times, but I'll let you guys know what I think of it. But yeah, Godzilla -1. It's also a cool title. But yeah, there you go. Zach, what do you got?
My thing of the week this week is the Doctor Who's 60th anniversary. I'm a
All right.
massive, massive fan of Doctor Who, have been for many years, and right now it's celebrating 60 years. Obviously, there's sort of two, now we can even make maybe only three different versions of the show at this point. Not versions, like eras of the show, I think is a better way to describe it. Obviously, there's the classic era, which ran from the 1960s up to the 1990s. Then we've had the sort of revival series, which ran from 2005 till 2022. And now we've got this new sort of revival, which is weird because like obviously externally it just looks like a continuation of the revival series, but it's not. They're really sort of positioning the beginning of the 60th as a new era of the show for new people to jump on. And so they've just aired the first of three specials on BBC iPlayer, or if you're elsewhere in the world outside the UK, you can watch it on Disney Plus now. It's a Disney Plus show, and you can really tell it's got money, it's got CGI and stuff in it now, and it's like good CGI and it's not bad anymore. It's interesting, the first special, we're not going into spoilers. Even though it's being marketed as a jumping on point for new viewers, it's picking up a story that ended like 15 years ago. Like this is the story of the Doctor and his friends called Donna, who their story ended quite tragically in 2008, where the Doctor had to wipe her mind, otherwise she would die. So she forgot everything about him and their adventures and stuff. But this first special picks up straight where that story left off. And so there's a handy sort of recap at the beginning in case you weren't watching Doctor Who 15 years ago, which I'm assuming many of you weren't. But it's still weird that this is the jumping on point, yet it's just basically jumping in on a story that was sort of concluded and done years and years ago. But yeah, if I recommend it. The first episode was very fun. This upcoming episode on this weekend on Saturdays they come out. It's supposed to be very, very good, very sort of thrilling stuff. Doctor Who is very much an adventure of the week kind of show. You have the Doctor and the companion every week, but they're just thrown into all sorts of random sort of scenarios and stuff, and that's what the show is. There's a whole new season starting in next year, and it starts with a Christmas Day special next month. And if you are a new viewer, I would actually recommend waiting for that, because that I think will be the true jumping on point for new viewers, because obviously, like I said, the current sort of specials are very much revisiting old storylines, and so you may feel a bit alienated by that if you haven't been watching the show. But if you just want fresh new characters, new this, that, and the other, I think wait for the Christmas Day one, because that will be a proper jumping on point where it's a clean slate, new characters, new adventures and stuff. So yeah, Doctor Who, that's my thing of the week.
Maybe someday I'll watch that, but
if you like time
we'll
travel
see.
and you like sci-fi, Doctor Who's great.
I know. I just, yeah, I was just always put off by my reasoning isn't good. I'm not going to justify it. So, I've watched. There's a movie that came out a long time ago in the 80s called The Lathe of Heaven, and it was a PBS done movie. It's really like cheaply done. It's like basically like a play shot, kind of like that. But it's an amazing story, like super cool story. And I've watched it, a couple of the remakes. So yeah, when sci-fi is good, it doesn't matter if it's like special effects. But I think part of it's just because Doctor Who is such a big universe. That issue of like where to jump in is always a problem, you know. So maybe this is kind of a good starting point. It's difficult too, because you start with this one and it's like you kind of like it, but then if you go back to like the 70s stuff, you're like, oh man, this is just I don't know.
Yeah.
It's a lot more of a shock to kind of get back into. So we'll see though. Maybe I'll try it out. But other than that, all right, we'll stick around now for a Q&A with the audience. We normally record this Fridays at 1 p.m. Eastern time, but we did it earlier this week, so sorry about that. Some of us are taking time off from working last weekend. But yeah, normally Fridays, 1 p.m. Eastern time. You can join us on our YouTube channel where we record this live and do video and take questions from the audience. Otherwise, follow me on Twitter, Daniel_Rubino, Rubino. You could also follow me on Threads at the same address. And the same goes for Zach at ZACBOWDEN, both on Twitter and as Threads. As always, thanks for tuning in, and we'll talk to you next time. Take care, everyone.
We've been saying it for ages, but we really do need to move the podcast. I think we should do it on Thursdays at this time every week, if that works for you, Dan.
Possibly. Yeah, I got to see what meetings I have.
Fridays is just too awkward for me. It's too late for me on a Friday to do it, because that's why we're all over the place, because sometimes I've got to be places on Friday evening. So it would be easier for me if we do it on a Thursday.
All right.
So maybe in the new year we'll try and settle on a new slot in the week for the podcast, so it can be consistent again. Because I know we've been quite inconsistent recently. I don't think that's helping us. Do you think Hudson Valley will be announced during? Do you think Hudson Valley will be announced at Build or dedicated event again? It won't be announced at Build. We go through this same thing every time, every year. We're always like, Build would be where they announce Windows things, and then they never announce Windows things at Build. So no, there will not be. I don't think they'll announce it at Build. Your thoughts on Tiny 11, the 2311 project, and is it any good? I have not tried any of these shrinking Windows projects because I'm a user of Windows. I use all of Windows. No, but I hear good things. I hear they sort of work and stuff. I don't know if Windows Update works, because sometimes they can break Windows Update. But if Windows Update works, then that's great. But I don't see the point in it. I think most PCs come with enough performance these days that they can run full Windows without much of an issue. Unless you're running on a super low-end device, in which case, yeah, sure, give it a go. It's just, if there are any other comments or questions, feel free to put them in the chat. If there are no questions, then I get to leave. Wow, nobody has any questions. Cool. That's fine by me. All right, in that case, we can head off. Actually, wait. What are we most excited about for Hudson Valley? The AI stuff is genuinely cool. The stuff that I've seen or heard in regards to what they're building out for the next gen AI experiences on Hudson Valley are. It's that thing where what we've talked about, where, like, you know, right now I don't like how I have to ask and Copilot to do things for me. Like, I want Copilot to just be smart and work for me in the background. Stuff like that is coming with Hudson Valley. The idea that Copilot can sort of analyze and identify things that you're doing on your computer, log things that you've been doing on your computer, and enhance Windows search as a result, being able to sort of refer back to things that you may not have been smart enough to take a note of earlier in the day. Stuff like that is stuff that Microsoft is working on for Hudson Valley. And like I said, when I get a chance to detail it in an article, I certainly will. I'm working on it as we speak. But not yet, because I still need to get some details ironed out and ensure everything is safe to talk about without getting anyone in trouble. So yeah, so there, we'll talk about more of that soon. But I think that's it for the questions. Nobody seems to have any more. So thank you very much for tuning in, everybody. We'll be back next week. Follow us on Twitter. We'll keep you updated when we go live. But until then, we will see you next time. Bye-bye.